Hi everyone and welcome to MZ Webinars. This is the fourth in our economic development series. All of the others are available on the MZ UK YouTube channel. As we go through this, please feel free to ask any questions using your control panel, and I will do my best to answer them at the end of the webinar. My name is Will Cookson. I'm the Business Development Manager for Economic Development. And today's webinar is going to be focusing on identifying your region's potential growth industries, showing you how we can zoom in on the detail, and also a first look at our new Sector Strength Finder tool. I'd like to say a brief introduction about MZ for those of you that don't know of us. At MZ, we believe in providing detailed, robust and complete insights to help organisations make better decisions relating to your local economy. We operate in three main areas: further education, higher education and economic development. And we provide LMI, labour market information, to connect people, education and employers. I thought it'd be useful to summarise the challenge as we see it for economic developers. There's diminishing central government funding, devolution, increased competition, and also Brexit to throw into the mix. The challenge is as hard, if not harder, than it's ever been, and the challenge really is to how do you drive local growth and ensure that you support your local residents, I suppose your local employers and industries to the best ends of your region itself. Every local authority, as we see it, or local enterprise partnership, is in a very similar position. The question is, how can you build a more compelling evidence-based case to ensure that businesses move into your area or prosper in your area? Now, in previous webinars, I've gone through in some detail about the cluster methodology that we're using. Essentially, we have taken all of the industries that you would find in the UK, and we've condensed them down to 49 different clusters. In this webinar, we are going to, as I said, look at the Sector Strength Finder tool. So if you want to look into more detail about the cluster methodology, go and have a look at the previous webinars where we go into that in more detail. What we have in front of us here is a table split into 4 quadrants. On the x-axis, you have location quotient. This is the proportion of a industry that you have locally in regards to the national average. So anything above 1.2, where you've got that vertical line, is significant. On the y-axis, you have national growth from 2016 to 2021. And essentially, this shows what's growing nationally. So if we were to assume that there was a industry located in this top right quadrant, then that would be a strength, as you would have a significant proportion of it locally, which gives you a comparative advantage. And the growth is projected to be quite significant nationally. By the same method, if you had something in the bottom right quadrant around threats or risks, then essentially we've got declining growth, but you've got a high proportion of it locally. You've got a comparative disadvantage. Now, I thought it'd be useful to use a real example. When I say a real example, this is in an anonymized region. And really, this starts to show how we can look at the different clusters that you would see within a region. You can see that there's green and dark grey. The green are local. These are clusters that you will find everywhere. They will serve local need, and really the more you have of them will probably be dependent on the demographics that you have, i.e. the more people, the more you will have things like education and health services and so on. Those make up 14 of the 49 clusters. We're interested predominantly in the dark grey clusters, the tradable clusters. These are industries that tend to export their services or products out of the region. They're also the industries that will tend to drive growth. We've highlighted business services here because there's a significant location quotient of 1.5, and there's also projected national growth of 11.2%. They're a large employer, over 11,000 jobs. The size of the circle is reflective of the number of jobs within that industry. So we'd say this is a cluster of interest. So what we're going to do now is we're going to zoom in on that cluster and look at some of the detail, what sits below it. And this is where it gets interesting. So the two top industries here and the most significant industries are the activities of call centres, high location quotient, so very much a presence within this region, significant amount of jobs, 6,200 jobs plus, and projected growth is where it doesn't look as positive. So nationally, the projected growth is 0.4. So we can see that there's potentially going to be very little growth or a marginal decline. The second one there is activities of professional membership organisations. Now, here we can see a location quotient, which is significant, 2.4, but we can not as significant as call centres. Number of jobs is 1,000, but you can see projected growth is 10%. So there's potential to grow this industry, drawing on the workforce, which will be similar in some cases to the call centres, and an opportunity there for local economic developers potentially to bring in new businesses to the area based on the fact that the workforce exists there, and grow it further. Regional comparison is important to see how you compare to neighbouring areas, to see whether it is something that defines your area, sees whether it's something that is significant. It's also useful for attracting new businesses and targeting potential businesses to approach. It will demonstrate that the workforce is present locally, and it will demonstrate that the skills that are needed by that industry are likely to be present locally as well. So what we've done is we've given you a quick, and what I also wanted to show is the occupations within the cluster. So you can see here that call and contact centre occupations, unsurprisingly, are over 30% of the jobs within the cluster. There's customer service occupations and so on and so forth. It gives you an idea, again, of the workforce and the potential skills that sit within the area. I think what we've done here is we've shown you the way in which we can provide insight for economic development functions. We are currently doing this in collaboration with a number of local authorities. And we feel that by following this process and doing it thoroughly and doing it for all of the significant clusters within a region, you can start to identify the industries that are driving growth locally, the sectors that you could focus your business traction strategy and efforts on, and start to develop a clear strategy for future growth. So as I mentioned at the start of the webinar, I'd like to give you a sneak peek at the new local sector strength finder tool. This is an online tool. It's a self-serve tool. You don't need to be coming at this from a background in research analysis or with a background as an economist. This is for everyone to be able to use. It's self-explanatory, quite simple, but it also provides clear insight, much in line with what we've already seen. What I thought it would be fun to do is to actually show the tool itself. So very similar to the table we saw earlier. Here you can see the opportunities, strengths and risks, and the tradable and local industries and how they're represented within another anonymized region. And you can see here on the far right hand side, we've got a outlier, which is digital, with a total number of jobs as 14,100, significant location quotient of over 4%, and significant job growth nationally, projected for 3.2%. I thought it'd be useful to look at a summary, and this is where you can start to compare digital in your region to how it is nationally. The light blue line on this graph in terms of regional trends, the dark blue being the anonymized region we're currently looking at, and the blue is a comparative. The sort of royal blue is the comparative region. And you can see here that there is, you can see there's been significant growth within the region itself, far above national and above the comparative region. But then you can see also that it's projected that the national will catch up with it and slightly exceed it by, well, we're out in 2025 by this point. So 2.6% change in terms of the projected jobs between 2016 and 2024 within this region. And then obviously nationally, that's looking like 10%. So you can see that ending up in similar places. The comparative region, the royal blue one, falls in just under at 4.9%. It gives a snapshot of and an overview of the industry and where it's going. Obviously, top right hand corner, you've also got the average wages as well, and a comparison to the national average wage, so slightly higher in this region than it is nationally. What we're going to do here is we're going to have a look at the industries that sit within this cluster. And obviously what we're going to do is identify the ones that have the majority of jobs and probably we'll have a deeper dig into those. So you can see here, if we select these top three, and then we can have a look at those. And what's interesting here is computer programming activities is at the top, with a projected 1.8% job change over the period of this period here, which we've set of 2016-17. So a slight increase, but we can see there's a slight decline within computer consultancy services of 1.8%, and quite a significant decline in terms of other telecommunications activities. We're going to have a look at them overall. So this is an industry overview, very similar to one we've seen, but looking at the comparison with other regions and with the national, but just looking at these clusters that we identified. And you can see here that when we do that, that it's a slightly different picture. So the national picture for Great Britain is that there'll be a larger increase, 9.9%, starting from a lower point. The region itself that we're looking at, the dark line, is going to be around 1.4%. And then we've got another comparative region with the southeast, which is the royal blue, where there's an increase of 5.3%, but starting from a much lower point in 2014 and slightly increasing. And obviously you can do that for any of the underlying clusters, or industries, I should say, within any of the clusters. So it'd be useful to have a look at the occupation overview. So this gives you an idea of the key occupations which sit within those industries. And as you can see, the highest proportion of them, 18% of them, programmers and software developers. You've also got information technology and telecommunication professionals, but 9.6%, and IT specialist managers. You get a gender breakdown looking at that nationally, and an age breakdown, which is quite useful in terms of planning any workforce interventions and any skills provision within higher education or further education, how you may go about influencing that. Here we can look at growth multipliers. So we can look, in this example, we've looked at by adding 100 jobs in the target sector, the impact that will have on the wider local economy. So 100 jobs would have technically, would create approximately 172 jobs. The annual wages would generate about 6,549,000, 6 million, 6.5 million even, a wage multiplier of 1.4. And it gives you an idea of the average wages. This is quite interesting in terms of the industry requirements. So this starts to unpick the supply chain. So these industries make purchases in region, which is the column just to the right. And then you've got imported purchases, which are bought in out of area, and the total. This is quite interesting if you want to start influencing and building supply chain in order to better support industries that you have locally, and also seeing other opportunities for growth. This information is very useful if you are talking to a business that may be moving into the area and you want to be able to quantify, by them moving into the area and creating X amount of jobs, what impact that will have on your local economy. It also identifies the occupations employed by these industries to give you an idea of where the needs within the workforce would be. So that's a real whistle-stop tour of our new Sector Strength Finder tool, which is launching next week at our conference. I'll talk about the conference in a minute. I just also wanted to say that if you haven't already, do download a free report for your area. This gives a high-level view, a brief analysis of the key local industry clusters within your area. The link is here. Go to our website and yes, give us information about your local area, what organisation you work for, your email, and we'll get that report to you and make contact. If you'd like to find out more about the Sector Strength Finder tool, then book a call or a demo. You can do this through Calendly. You can see the link there, or by all means email me or give me a ring. Let's book in time for a short call, or we can do a virtual demo at no obligation. Right, I've got no questions, so we'll move on. I did want to mention our conference, which is taking place next Tuesday in central Birmingham. There are a few places left. If you do want to register or have a look at the agenda, again, go to our website and come and join us. It's going to be very interesting, and that is where we'll be launching the Sector Strength Finder tool, and we'll also be hearing from some of the organisations that have been helping us with develop the tool, either as customers or in our initial work in terms of scoping out the tool and developing it. So all that leaves for me is to thank you for joining me for the webinar. Do make contact if you want to find out more. Hope to speak to you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.